It's May 10th, 2023, about 10:30 in the morning, and I'm here back in the boat shed to put some more bottom paint on my Allied Princess 36 Sequester, which is right behind me. Yesterday I did the port side, and I am working basically just up near the water line. The bottom paint is in pretty good shape, except for right along the water line where it tends to get the biggest workout, if you will. So what I'm doing is from the water line down to the top of the keel. So that's what I'm here to do today on the starboard side, which is the side you can see behind you. So I'm going to get going on that, and then we'll take a look at it when I get finished. I'm doing this in two stages because yesterday when I did the port side, my right knee, where I had the knee replacement surgery, was complaining a lot by the time I got finished. Now, the reason for that is pretty simple. Let's take a look at the floor in here. As you can see, the floor is gravel, which is good if you have a wood boat, but this is really coarse gravel, and it's quite uneven, and the footing is a little bit not the greatest. So, and plus I have to work around all the boat stands. This side is much better than the other side. Let's take a look at the port side. You can see port side is much closer to the boat next to it, and it's a lot harder to get around the stands. So that's where I was working yesterday, and the result was that I quit after finishing the port side simply because my knee told me it was time to quit. And you can see the issue right up here on the water line. You can definitely see the water line, where the actual water line is, as opposed to the painted water line. And so that is the area that gets kind of the most fouling. Now, this boat has been pressure washed, so that line there doesn't come off easily. But I'm just going to paint over it. So we'll put a coat of water-based ablative paint on. And in a second I'll show you what paint I'm using. Okay, this is the paint I'm using. This is Petit HRT Neptune, which is a water-based paint. It is also an ablative paint, so it will gradually wear off over the course of the season. I chose it because it's water-based and because it's cheap. This is under $100 a gallon. And the other reason I chose it is that it works here on the coast of Maine. I've not had any noticeable buildup on the hull since I started using this about 3 years ago. So it's definitely a decent paint to use here in the Mount Desert Island area on the coast of Maine. I'm applying it with a 7-inch, 3/16 of an inch nap roller, which is a very short nap. It means I have to load it with paint more often than if I used a longer nap, but it gives a much smoother surface. So I'm pretty happy with that roller application. So I'm just going to take this paint and give it a quick stir. Yesterday I stirred it up with a paint stirrer on my drill and did a good thorough job, and today it'll just need a quick stir with a stir stick before I get going. So I'm going to do that, and we're going to slap some paint on the hull. Well, it's about an hour later, and I have now finished up my painting. I used up what was left of my paint, and I'll show you what I accomplished. Basically, what I did was I went down from the water line down to just below the stands, all the way back. I did the leading edge of the keel. You can see the line there on the hull where I painted the leading edge of the keel out, because that's a high flow area. And she's done completely down to there. So what remains to do on the hull, if I feel ambitious over the next 2 weeks, is to come in here and go from the leading edge of the keel back and a little bit of the bottom of the hull, basically from the lower edge of the stands down to the keel. Back aft, yesterday I used a chip brush and I painted out the prop aperture here, and I painted all the gaps between the rudder and the keel all the way down, and I also painted the bronze keel shoe down at the bottom end of the rudder. And yesterday I did the port side of the rudder, and today I also did the starboard side of the rudder. And I'm painted under all the stands, and right now part of the reason I'm filming this video is because, as you'll see in a second, I'll get a little better light up here. I still have the two forward stands backed off. I'm just waiting for the paint under them to dry. And as soon as that happens, I will run them back up. And then we'll be set and I can go home. In the meantime, while I'm waiting for the paint to dry, I think I'm going to pull the masking tape. Now this stand is also loose, as you'll see here, but it's almost touching the hull, so it's not a problem. And you can see where I did the leading edge of the keel on this side. So the bottom paint is in good shape. Last year when the boat came out of the water, there was very little growth, so I'm very happy with this particular brand of bottom paint. And I probably could have gotten away with not painting the bottom this year, but I had a little over a half gallon of paint left, so I decided to do the highest fouling area, which is the bottom, the prop aperture, the rudder, and the leading edge of the keel, where the prop aperture, the rudder, and the leading edge of the keel are high water flow areas where I am likely to get more ablative loss of the paint than other parts of the hull. Remember, this is a sailboat. 7 knots is blazing fast for this boat, so we don't lose that much paint due to ablative flow. It's enough to keep any significant growth off of the hull. Anyway, I'm going to pull the tape, and after I finish that, I'll run those last 2 stands up. Okay, tape is off, and I've run the stands back up against the hull, and basically, unless I get ambitious and buy another gallon of paint and decide that my knee is up to it, this is all I'm going to do on the bottom this year. As I said, if I get ambitious, I might buy another gallon of paint and do the rest of the hull, but I don't know if I'll do that. Anyway, a comment about the stands, in case anybody was concerned that I was going to back the stands off and the boat was going to fall over. Now that's highly unlikely to happen for a couple of reasons. First off, with this kind of boat, this is a full keel with a cutaway forefoot. The vast majority, 99+% of the weight of the boat is on the keel, where it sits on that wooden blocking, which is a mixture of 6x6s and 8x8s. And there are 3 sets of blocking there that support the hull. The stands are there simply to keep it from tilting to one side or the other. And I have a total of 7 stands. I have this bow stand, which for this style of boat is completely superfluous, unless, you know, half a dozen people got up on deck on the bow. And then there are 3 stands on each side to keep the boat centered upright. As you can see, this boat next to me only has 2 stands on each side. This is a Bristol Channel Cutter 28 that displaces almost as much as Sequester, and it's supported with only 2 stands for balance. So I have overkill in terms of stands on my boat, and it's more than adequate, and I can back off any 2 stands as long as they're on opposite sides of the boat, and the boat will be in no danger of tilting. Furthermore, the yard doesn't mind me doing this because they know that I have been working with stands on boats like this for 30 years, and they're satisfied that I do know what I'm doing. And as you saw, I never back the stands off very much. Sometimes if I've already painted the side of the boat and the paint is dry and I just want to get under where the stands were, I'll just move the stands off to one side. But today I was painting under the stands where I was painting the hull too, so I just backed them off, and then in most cases, except for this one stand right here, I run them back up so they're almost touching the hull, and that way the boat is not going to fall over. And it's perfectly safe, if you know what you're doing, to back the stands off or even move them. In fact, when they get ready to load the boat on the hydraulic trailer, what they'll do is they'll take this bow stand out and they'll flip the other stands around so that they're just touching the hull, and the framework is not protruding under the hull. And then they'll back the trailer up, and as the trailer gets under the boat, they'll remove the forward stands and then the mid stands, and for the last little bit of the trailer backing under the boat, the only thing supporting the boat from side to side motion will be the rear stands. And they will raise the hydraulic pads on the trailer, but so they're not quite touching the hull. And then back in. And as a matter of fact, this boat, I adjust the stands after it's put in here to make sure the boat is vertical, not tilted to either side. And this boat has a wide enough base to the keel that it will stand up without any stands. I personally never do that, but the boatyard sometimes gets pretty close to that, just two stands at the back, keeping the boat upright while they're putting it on the trailer. So anyway, that is bottom paint on my 36-foot Allied Princess, and she's almost ready to go in the water. What remains to be done is for me, and here I am, what remains to be done is for me to lug some water up on the boat and fire up the diesel engine, make sure it starts right up, which I'm confident that it will. And I'm also going to put a battery charger on the batteries for a little while, particularly the starting battery, just to make sure I have plenty of oomph to start the batteries. They have been on the boat without being charged since early February, which is the last time I was on the boat before the knee surgery, and I did put the battery charger on them for about 4 hours at that point, and they weren't particularly depleted. Here in Maine, it gets cold enough in the winter that the rate of self-discharge of lead-acid batteries is pretty low, and my batteries, after a typical winter, will get down to about 12.4, 12.5 volts at the end of the winter, which is roughly 25% discharged, and which isn't bad at all. And all I do is turn everything off, turn the main battery switches off, and just leave them there on the boat. I do make sure that they're fully charged when the boat is put away, because unless you get really cold, well below 0 Fahrenheit, a fully charged battery will not freeze. So that's it for this boat work now, and I'll be ready in probably sometime next week. Later in the week, I'll go up and do the engine, and if I'm feeling ambitious, I may sand out the on-deck teak and put a coat of varnish on it, although that actually can wait until after the boat is in the water. It's just going to depend on how I feel after I do the test run of the engine. Okay, that wraps up boat work for today, May 10, 2023, 13 days before launch.